dead. Yeah, that makes sense.
Back from the dead, part 3 of the Unreal demo series, where I'm showcasing some work that I've been putting into learning Unreal and Wise. I'm still new to these softwares, so I'm learning a lot at the time, and so this is a fun place for me to showcase, and that requires a disclaimer that I am a sound designer, which means I'm not a professional programmer. Some of the methods that I'm going to be using, I don't know if they're the exact proper technique or if they're just, temporary methods that I figured out work. That being said, everything at the moment does work, so I think these are probably going to be relatively valid approaches to setting up these functions. But I won't be going too in-depth on these, mainly just showcasing sort of the general blueprint work and how the sounds are playing into that. So right now what I'm showing is the crouching function, how it basically played a crouching down sound and a crouching up sound, and then it sets the half height, sets the camera, actually sets the camera because I needed to get a little bit lower to the ground. And then there's a lot of conditions with if statements that I'm using in a lot of these blueprints to get the movement to kind of work together well. And so what this is asking is whether or not certain conditions are active in order to slide. So like for instance, you need to be sprinting in order to slide, and you need to be moving faster than a walking pace in order to slide. Here it's showing how the ground friction is turned to basically nothing as soon as the slide is performed, which allows you to slide and move down surfaces with gravity accurate physics so that it's, it'll slide faster the steeper the slope is. And then once your slide ends, it resolves the friction and it sets your player back to crouching speed or walking speed. So on the toggle, there's also a jump on slide event, which is basically just saying that if you were to jump while sliding, it would uncrouch you mid-jump. And here is where it's also setting the 3 different types of player movement speeds: your walking, crouching, and sprinting speeds. Here is the begin slide and end slide event, which uses a timeline that basically acts as a event tick node that is triggered while you are sliding along the ground. If it's false that you're sliding, it resolves movement, sets the friction back to normal. And if it's true and you're able to slide, then it adds a force and kind of propels you slightly faster than the sprinting speed to give you a little bit of a longer slide. And depending on the floor influence, which is kind of the angle of the floor, you'll be sliding down surfaces faster and up surfaces slower. If you slide up a surface, you'll basically resolve the movement almost immediately. So the next thing I'm going to show is this jump here, this super jump ability, which comes with a charging bar to charge your jump. So the logic for the jumping had to be flipped around a bit from what it is default set as, because now rather than pressing the button and jumping, you're actually pressing. It's questioning whether or not you can vault, because I added a vaulting function as well. I can go into that later in a different video. But if you can't vault, then it's charging the jump. And so it starts charging that meter down here through the event tick, which is basically just grabbing a float value and it's dividing it by delta seconds in a value between 0 and 1. It can charge from 0 to 1. And so this is in Wise. I have an RTPC set up that is also from a value of 0 to 1. And with this, it is linked to kind of a emphasis sound for the jump. It's almost like a piston. So it's pretty straightforward. It's just I'm just showcasing this ability to set up an RTPC that is kind of set on something that is, very affected by player input, and it can be spammed, and it needs to read that information quickly, so the delta seconds are being read directly from the event tick node there. So now when the jump key, spacebar, is released, that is actually when it asks, are you crouching, are you not? If you are, then it asks, are you sliding? And you see, I'm using a lot of these conditions to basically just set the parameters of how I think the character should be able to move. I don't think you should be able to jump if you're crouched. I don't think you should be able to super jump if you're sliding. Like, these kind of conditions, they're all tweaked in here. And then this is all running through the switch set switches, which then in Wwise here, basically I have like a default ground jump, and then I have similar folders but with added material random containers that have like material sounds to them that add into the original or the default jumping sound, and then it switches between those depending on the material surface you are jumping on, landing on. I have those set up for walking, running, sliding, pretty much everything. The surfaces are all set up in the same way. And so after you jump, your stamina is triggered to regenerate as well. And this is kind of just showing how the jumps either succeed or don't succeed depending on which conditions are active. For instance, if you have stamina or not. And now on falling, I have added a fall damage system that is basically just reading your velocity, and it's saying if it's at a certain velocity, don't do any damage. If it's at another velocity that's higher, do the smallest amount. If it's the highest velocity, do the maximum amount of damage, and if it's in between those, then do the in between. And so now you can see here the switches are set up same way for the landing so that the surfaces are appropriate. So you might notice that depending on how much you charge the jump, it's actually draining more stamina. If you don't charge it as much, it's draining less stamina. And there's also an RTPC on the stamina that is showing breathing intensity, basically, is what I call this, as your stamina depletes. This is using a blend container and an RTPC together. Blends between exhausted heavy breathing and light breathing. And it basically just gets louder and quieter as your stamina depletes. Once the stamina has depleted and it hits 0, the stamina bar flashes and a sound is posted for the stamina out, which is basically, it could be anything. It could be the player coughing, it could be really exhausted breathing, and as soon as the stamina then starts to replenish, you can also post a sound there for a relief or getting your breath back, Here's an example of the fall damage. It's the maximum fall damage height there. And so the stamina system itself is probably the most complicated thing. This is what took me the longest to set up for sure, just the amount of conditions that I needed to use to make sure that everything was working in the way that I wanted to. It took a very long time, but basically just some of the general kind of conditions are being set here for whether stamina is full, empty, whether you can drain stamina or not. If the stamina is out, completely, like if that was triggered. So there's an example here. Once my stamina is out, it does once, it posts the sound, and then once the replenishing starts, it resets that. And so here is the actual kind of beef of the system here. You can see this is switching on my movement here. Stopped sprinting, it's not going in, and as soon as I start sprinting, it drains. And it's basically just looping into itself at a 0.01 second delay time, re-triggering and draining the drain rate of stamina over there on the right side. And all of those conditions that are passing through are necessary to say whether the stamina should be draining or not. Like for instance, once you jump, I don't think the stamina should continue to drain. And these are both, the stamina is being read as it's going down and up with those RTPCs. And then for the regen, there's a difference between whether the stamina depleted fully or whether you just stopped draining and then it went up. And so there's a 5-second delay for if stamina goes out, and then it plays the regen stamina sound. And basically that drain stamina event can be called to anytime I need to attach it to something that I believe should be draining stamina. If it works in a way where it's going to be draining it at the same rate that the sprinting rate does, then that would work. And so here, this is my just basic kind of movement graph, which is using the default movement for WASD, all of that. And it's basically saying on that node, if you are moving, setting it that you're moving there, condition, and then it's going to go through another group of conditions, and these are what are switching between the timelines for different footsteps, basically footstep speeds, because I'm using first person template and I don't have any actual feet to animate sounds to, or like a skeleton that I can watch the animation. I basically have these timelines that are just triggering the footsteps at different speeds. And then based on what kind of movement you are doing, it is simultaneously stopping stopping 2 timelines and starting one. And then I guess just stopping that one time and starting another timeline. I'm telling you, I set all this stuff up myself, but it's still pretty confusing to me. It's kind of a headache, I guess, looking at some of this stuff. The stamina system was the hardest thing for me to figure out how to set up. But it's such a good learning experience, and I really would recommend this to anybody who's trying to get into Unreal. Doing something like setting up a stamina system is super helpful for troubleshooting practice, because I was able to follow a tutorial, basically set up the basis of the stamina system. And then as I came up with new functions, I needed to add new conditions, I needed to add new ways of draining stamina, and every single time I added in something that solved or worked, it ended up breaking 2 other things. And that is where I feel there's genuinely like a lot of progress that's made learning, when you have to kind of pick something apart and dissect it, figure it out, put it back together, So here I'm kind of showing off the health system a little bit, how the damage was working. There's this heartbeat that is set up in a similar way, basically the same exact way as the breathing intensity, but now connected to your health instead. As your health drops, the heartbeat, you can see it kind of comes in when you're below 30%, and then gets louder, slightly faster as you drop towards 0. As well as this health full, which is played once the meter is full. And now this is just a sine wave. I'm just using like a sine wave plugin in Wwise, and then setting some RTPC parameters on that to kind of make it go up and down in pitch and distortion. So pressing V uses a stim, replenishes the health, and then if you're out of stims...
I need more stims. Damn, I'm out of stims. Where can a guy find some meds around here?
I generated multiple variations of the same line, and then those are all in their own individual random containers that are within a larger random container for whatever that function is. So the out of stims random container is full of these different random containers, and same with the pickup stims. And each of these general containers also have an empty track in there just to give a chance that there's no dialogue that plays.
Jesus Christ, I thought I was gonna die.
And so this next feature that I added is just in the events that you are out of health, you have the ability to use a stim, and you're also low on stamina. Even if your stamina is completely out, you can use the stim and it will instantly start the regeneration process for the stamina as well. Here's an example of how that type of falling height didn't kill me from there, even with a small amount of health left, and maximum kills you, puts the death screen up, then plays the respawn sound. And here's just a quick overlay of the health system, how it connects to the UI here. It's updating the bar, the progress bar, and then when you die, plays the death screen. The death event here, it just stops the player from being able to move or do anything. And then it plays the death sound in the death menu. On respawning, it just sets you in a certain location and initializes the health bar. And now this is similar to the stamina system, just showing the rate of health that you'll be generating. And now this is the stim system, and how if you press V, it's going to ask first, do you have stims? Is your health full? And then whether those conditions are matching properly, it will use the stim. It will give you stamina on the stim, and then this is the health regen refresh rate right here. Much more simple than the stamina. It basically just has to check, do you have health and are you taking damage? And those are the only two conditions that would interrupt your health regenerating. There's a lot more conditions that would interrupt the stamina draining or regenerating.
I need more stims.
So this is showing just how the out of stims event that I was showing before is even being triggered. Because if you do not have stims, then it triggers that.
Some meds around here?
If you do, it'll play stim sound and starts the regen, the health regen sound, which is connected to the RTPC. As soon as health is full, it stops that sound right there. And if you are taking damage, it'll also stop the sound right there.
Where can a guy find some meds around here?
So here's the little stim box.
I thought I was gonna
temporary as well. Right now I don't have any sort of geometry for a stim box, so I just started by grabbing this cube, making it a blueprint, and this is just saying fill the stims back to 3 for the first person character once the box is picked up. And then there it's just making it disappear. As soon as you pick it up, it sets it to invisible. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this showcase, guys. Thanks for watching. Once again, if anybody is interested in a more in-depth tutorial, I would definitely be able to do that. I'm doing this kind of more for portfolio purposes at the moment, but I'd be happy to help anybody. You can leave your questions in the comments below. Thanks for watching.